my entire career, we've been providing financing to small and mid-sized companies. And in many cases, we're providing financing to government contractors. If I can break that universe down a little bit more, we're oftentimes providing financing to veterans, oftentimes service-disabled veterans who have decided to pursue their entrepreneurial dreams and provide services or goods directly to the federal government. What's been most fulfilling is the customers and the companies that I've had the good fortune to interact with. And I'll tell you a couple stories. So back in 2003, I got a call from a CPA friend of mine who had a client, and he says, we need to get this financing in place in 2 weeks. So my response was, can you send me the financials? And he's like, we're working on them. So I was like, well, how far along are you? He's like, well, I'm at receipt number 50 out of 100 receipts in the shoebox. And I thought he was joking. But he sent me a picture, and clearly he wasn't joking. So it was a situation where the business owner, who's a veteran, thought her partners were doing what they said they were doing, and they weren't. She is a phenomenal woman. She was she graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy and provided cybersecurity services to the federal government. So what was so fulfilling for me was that she needed help in this particular instance, and we were able to provide the fuel, some of the fuel that propelled her growth. Well, she went on to grow that business exponentially. She went on to sell her business to a large government contractor, and then was hired on another management team that did the same thing, and now runs a large government contractor for a very large private equity company here in DC. What was most fulfilling was to provide the financing that her company needed, so that she could continue on the journey that I explained. So the primary product that we started providing in 1992 is a product called factoring. And the challenge that oftentimes contractors, especially winning your first contract, you are in pursuit of this contract and you are totally fixated, right? Single-minded in pursuit of this contract. I like to compare it to the dog chasing the car. Now the reaction is often similar as the dog chasing the car. What does the dog do when he catches the car?
Doesn't know.
Yeah, he asks the question, what the hell do I do now? Well, that's the question I get most often from entrepreneurs. So the entrepreneurs oftentimes say, okay, I have a contract, I'll go to the bank. I have this contract, it has to be worth something, surely they'll lend me some money on it. It's more complicated than that, and technically the contract is not an asset till you perform some services or some work under the contract and somebody owes you some money. So therefore, unless you fit within the other categories, your entrepreneurs realize that, especially if you're a new business and you don't have outside collateral outside the business, that they can't obtain financing from the bank. But meanwhile, contract may have started, people may be working, and you have this imminent date. The date is payroll. You know what happens when employees don't get paid? They walk out the door and they generally don't come back, which would essentially be the end of the business if you're a services business. So it's very important that you meet the payroll, otherwise all the work you've done is for naught. So essentially what we do is as companies render services, whether they, and if the government has an obligation to pay, we'll advance against that obligation so that the company has the resources to make critical payments like payroll. Because the cycle of cash works as follows. You generally you get a contract, let's say you're providing facilities maintenance at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. So you are responsible for taking care of the facilities. You cut the grass, you clean the building, change the lights, you make sure the facilities are in good order. All of the services required to make sure the facilities run smoothly is covered under your contract. Well, that takes a fair amount of labor hours. So you're going to have laborers working around the clock to make sure the facilities are in good order. Well, those laborers expect to be paid, and they should be paid. So you're generally going to have a payroll twice a month. And so most contractors have payroll on the 7th and the 22nd is what I find, or 7th and the 23rd. So your first payroll would be the 22nd. So you've incurred expenses for 3 weeks. You have an outlay of cash. Maybe you have the cash, maybe you don't. Most of the contractors that come to us, they're coming because they don't have the cash to make that payment. And so they seek financing in order to accomplish that. So we'll make an advance so that the contractor can meet the payroll on the 22nd, and then we'll make another advance so they can meet the payroll on the 7th. So you probably bill on the 5th, so we made 2 advances, you bill on the 5th, and then the government will take another 30 days to pay. So your cash cycle is 60 days. So you work for 60 days, then you receive your first payment, is what I typically see. So you need to be able to finance 60 days of your operation. So if you have your annual contract value is $1 million, then your monthly invoice is $80,000. Your expenses are probably $60 to $65. So that means you have $120,000 to $130,000 worth of expenses before you get your first payment. That's the quandary that business owners find themselves in once they are the proverbial dog who catches the car. And when they see that, because some people look at things differently. Everybody looks at things differently. Some people like to look ahead and understand each step that's going to happen well in advance. But the problem is when you are, even if you're like that, if you're a business owner and you're a new business owner, the moment you open your business, you're in what's called survival stage. If you don't get some revenue, you're not going to survive as an entity, which is why we call it survival stage. So even if you do think like that, you have a challenge right in front of your nose, which you are going to likely focus on because it's imperative to the survival of your organization. So you only have so many months you can withstand yourself with no revenue. So when you get the revenue, then you're like, I have the revenue. Oh my gosh, I gotta solve the cash flow quandary. And so that's the service that we provide. And generally, we're providing those advances each month, and then we collect when the money comes in, and we deduct the portion we advance, we deduct the applicable fees, and we forward the balance onto the business owner. So there's cash constantly coming into the business to support the business operations. So that's the service that we provide in order to assist government contractors as they go on their entrepreneurial journey.